Hi everyone! I'm Lily, and you can't see my face today. Partially because I look disgusting, because you know what, it's the end of the world and all that with the plague. And you know what, I don't look my best, so you don't get to see my face today. But also because I need this setup here so you can see my piece of paper here, because today we're doing some more game dev stuff for Librarian Adele. And we're not going to be doing actually like technical stuff, but it's going to be more on the design side of things. So for those of you who have not seen the past few Librarian Adele videos, which we've done a few things. We did one on kind of this library system and then one writing books. But it is a game that I am developing with a small team of people. That is a community simulator, so kind of same genre as things like the ever so topical Animal Crossing, as well as like Stardew Valley, Harvest Moon, those sort of games. But in a lot of those games, you are running a magical library, where in a lot of these games, there is usually some sort of like museum or library or some sort of place that like, oh, you can get collectibles and put collectibles in there. But in this game, you're actually running that shop or that place, and you are a bibliomancer who comes to this town and finds that like you've been assigned to this library, only to find that it's been mysteriously burned down. And today is going to be kind of some of my brainstorming for what it's going to look like. Honestly, probably what we do here, I'll probably clean up and do some sketches, because actually tomorrow morning I have a meeting. Every Wednesday we have a all hands meeting, and tomorrow's is just kind of a wrap up, like, okay, here are topics we've talked about before. Let's get something settled on as we start actually setting things up and designing things. So that's very exciting. And one thing I'm probably I want to like get a few designs and layouts planned out, and that's what we're doing now. So kind of just very high-end architectural, like how we want to structure this. And also these designs wouldn't be set in stone anyway. Also just notably, if you want to follow along with the development of this game, I'll link its Twitter in the description below. And if you just want to find the high-level stuff. But if you are interested in helping with the development of the game, pop over to the Discords or the channel Discover on Discord server, also linked below, and just ping me or pop me a message on Discord and be like, hey Lily, I'd be interested in helping out with this project. Really anything is welcome, from even if it's just like you want an extra pair of eyes to play what we have and be like, hey, is this fun or not? But without further ado, let's start out. So we have a nice big piece of paper here, and we're just going to be kind of roughing out things. When it comes to actually what it looks like in terms of like architectural style, besides the floor plan itself, that might actually end up being variable. So we're really much right here is where we're looking at the floor plan. So while we're here, let's start by writing down, move this over here, just kind of the things that the library needs and kind of, it has. So a few things it needs is, needs, that's an awkward, angle. And honestly, this can be done in pen. And of course I can't read that because so it needs, things we need. So, and this is in terms of like needs of when we're designing it. And okay, so obviously we need a path back to town. This is going to be situated kind of like north of the town square. Like there's a path that goes off the town square that kind of heads to the from the village of Lakeshore to the library. Honestly, ideally, because it's kind of the center of the community and all that, we'd kind of want it to be like much more present in the town square, but we're having it be a little bit north and down a path, just so we can make it a different zone, which just helps from the technical side of things. So that's why we're not having it right on the town square. So we need a path to town, and that would probably be coming from the south here. So you come up it and it comes off of an inner wall facade of the building. Next up, we want probably. So north of it is going to be the band, so it's probably south of the band. The band is this huge ruin that the city is right up against. It spans the entire equator of the planet and whatnot. But it will be later on in the game a sort of actually kind of like exploration where you can like go in there and like do some archaeology and like going through these ruins and stuff and finding things to actually bring back to the museum and things like that. But it's actually be kind of close to it. Like it's kind of currently like nestled in the woods between the village of Lakeshore and we haven't settled the name. It's between Lakeshore and Lakeside, and we're not sure what we want to do. South Band, path town, and it's probably gonna be like the furthest north thing that's closest to the band. So, and then the next thing that we're to do is that while the layout is probably going to be very much set in stone, where it's like, this is how it is when it's doing it, the actual internal arrangement of the library is going to be variable to the player. So we need to have space for modules. And this is kind of like, a module is kind of like how a room is set up, where you might have and we're thinking of having two primary kinds of modules. We have maybe three. So actually I think three is the correct one. So first off we have collections. Collections is, you don't actually unlock collections until probably later on. Like obviously also building this library will be in multiple phases, and we want to be like, okay, what do the multiple different phases of this library look like? So collections is the first one, is the first type of module, and okay, the early phases of building a library, okay, everything's just gonna be one collection where you can house so many books, and books contribute to a score called your renown, which is kind of like how famous your library is. And if you have more books than your library's capacity, that you can put books in the library and have the library store them, but you can only be displaying so many at once, so it kind of caps your renown. And that is both from a overall cap and also per subject cap. One of the past videos I did was the COP categorization system, and essentially eventually you can have an entire, like not a wing, but like at least a place where you can have a collection for each of the 10 COP classes of books. And this is what collections are. So once you get to a certain point where it's not just like everything's in kind of a central room, you can say like, hey, we have this library here where it's like, oh, here's like the main building, but off on this side we have this place, and we can say like, this is the social sciences wing. But really in game what you do, you'd build that and then you have a blank collection, and the player could go in and say like, hey, I want to make this the social sciences collection, and obviously you would have things associated with that. It might have graphical differences and all that, and but also it's one of those things where also have collections later on when we do add like exploration of the bands. This, you might add it as a artifacts collection or a geology collection or whatever. Just kind of like, these are, but the idea of collections is that most of each of these modules is that more or less they have kind of the same footprint. So collections might be like, oh, it's kind of like long and like that, and figuring out what those footprint lights are like do depend on how we handle this. I'm now realizing this video might be very much more longer than I expected. So you have collections, and that's the first one. Next one, which is, I don't know what a good way to call this, and we're gonna say library functions. So the main focus of collections is storing things that your library actually houses. library functions is kind of the parts of libraries that like aren't strictly to be a collection, and a wing might have these library function modules in it, and these are might be things like a administration desk, which is probably one of the first ones you'll build, which just allows people easily like interact with the library from that. But even it might end up being things like, okay, this is like a reading room or reading area. It might be a classroom, because if you want to like host some classes at thing, because I mean, kind of part of the thing about a library and how libraries just are, is that they're not just, it's not just a place where you house books, they are these community centers, and these library functions are those things that they provide. So these modules are things like reading rooms, classrooms, it might be even something like a more of a kind of like a lounge or parlor area that isn't strictly a reading room, that's more like a group area, and those sort of things. And these essentially will unlock different things you can add to the library's schedule, because one of the ideas is that like, okay, you can actually organize the schedule, and that will give you various bonuses to the library, and people might like it more. Like, I don't know, parents of kids would, and the kids themselves will get an opinion boost to you if you're like running like some children's education programs at your library and things like that, and helping with that. But those require you need to have the prerequisite library functions. And it also might be things like how many visitors the library can be handling at once and things like that, which would then also handle things like donations and stuff like that. So the next module this is going to be civilian. Civilian modules. I don't know how many each of these we need, but these, and also we may not think about where we want to place these. This could be very high level. What is this place is going to look like? Civilian modules. The library is not just this place that you run. It is also where you, the player, live. So this might be something like your bedroom. All that might be hard-coded in, just because it's your spawn location too, and that might get a bit antsy if how you're doing that. But on top of that, it might be something like a kitchen or your dining room, your personal living room, like anything that would be kind of like in your house in one of these sort of games. These are civilian modules, and they're just kind of part of the living room, part of that. I'm kind of thinking that like those will probably be mostly in like upper floors, kind of the idea that like, okay, like a first 2 floors that are actually the general library, and then above that is like where you live. We'll have to figure that out. So those are 3 types of modules. And then on top of that, just other things that will probably be hard-coded and not customizable. And will be the, probably, like I said, your bedroom. Just because we're bedroom / study. Like, I could see those getting things, because you actually go to bed, you go to bed, like, in, like, things like Stardew, you don't actually go to your bed, you actually go to your study, because that starts something called evening activities. If you get to bed, which essentially it's like, hey, if you get to bed at a certain time, you can do an evening activity. This might be something like, reading a book, or like doing some studies to give you an XP boost on the next day, or you could do something like host someone for dinner, or things like that, where you can, these abstracted things that don't really fit into normal gameplay, but also just encouraging people to get to bed early. I mean, obviously you could just stay up late and do that, but kind of just encouraging people to kind of turn in early and kind of help move the gameplay along, and kind of having also have these abstracted activities, but still like working at that. An evening activity like during a day that's a holiday might be attend the festival that's in town or something like that. And and the final thing we need is that I can think of, well, not final thing, but we probably, another thing that's probably hard coded is some sort of greenhouse, just because a lot of the stuff that we're having with this is, it doesn't really make sense to remodel a room. Like, we could put like, oh, greenhouse, we could say it's a type of collection or a library function, but realistically it looks very different. And for kind of the gardening part, like this is kind of your advanced gardening room. Because one thing that like I personally am a huge completionist in games, and one thing we want to have as part of the end game of this game is kind of like every facet of the game, like all the gathering, like the gathering skills and exploration, like obviously the obligatory fishing minigame and all that, kind of has a place where you can like show off all that, where you can actually fill out the library with any sort of content that's in the game. Like if we add a new fish, we will also add a new place where you can store that fish to display it if you catch it, as kind of this completionist thing. And the greenhouse and potentially some other things that are like very specialized buildings that don't make sense. And obviously the greenhouse might get upgraded later, like they also add in like, oh, you can also add in like an arboretum or something like that. And that also would probably tie into some, like, have the similar function to like the library functions, where it's like, oh, you need to have the greenhouse restored if you want to run like botany classes or something like that. And then probably some sort of courtyard, just because we've kind of talked about it, and just kind of like have an outdoor area kind of situated that figured out. So that's kind of the main thing that we're talking. These are kind of the main things we're looking at that care. Like these first two, they're not that important. It just kind of means that like, okay, we want to just be aware that the band's up here and we're coming up to it from down here. Alright, so let's just, alrighty. So, so general design, so I think like I said, I think we're like going for nothing that is going to be here that we've talked about is that kind of the library is all burnt down and ruined and stuff. But like nearby the library that was originally part of the library is going to be like, oh, it's a small workshop that has since been kind of abandoned, and kind of the idea is that like upon getting of the administrator of the town is kind of like, oh no, you don't have a place to stay. You know what, if you want to just take over that workshop, that's fine. And it also is kind of where some like your basic like skilling tables and stuff will be, where it's like when you get your like first level alchemy like stand or whatever before you get like an alchemy room or whatever, it'll be there in the workshop just so you have a place to start, and also just that's your initial spawn location. It's all very good. You're probably gonna be sleeping on like a pile of hay, but it's kind of there. And whether we want to be like keep that there as is, or maybe incorporate it into the building where it's like that will actually be part of like the workshop portion, just like that, we don't know. I kind of think that's like it's gonna be kind of like a dingy building, and it kind of like might get like just like kind of torn down and moved and replaced. Because also another thing I was thinking about that won't be on the floor plan, but is the idea of having a basement that is kind of for those things, where it's like these are functions for things like building things and storing just bulk items and whatnot, that just kind of just down there, and it's kind of your reserve collections and whatnot. And also like the warehouse will have like, at first we'll have like a very basic bookshelf that acts as your first library. That's like, oh, you can display 10 books, and which won't be that much, but to get people acquainted with the mechanics of here's how you display books. Oh no, you got 11 books. You're actually not getting anything more from having more books until you actually build the main library. So yeah. So, and also one thing we can think about is, what does this building look through all of its stages? So I think like one of those first things is like the first stage as we're looking at is probably going to be something along lines of just like a very basic, like we have this road coming up here, and yeah, okay, we have like a workshop off to the side here, which I don't know, you can go into and whatnot, and but then it will like, so you're probably just got like a one-room library. That's probably just going to be like, okay, it's like here, 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 and you can come in here, and there's like a door there, and that's it, and maybe like a door in the back that can go there, and like, okay, there's like lots of trees and stuff, and it's like overall very much like things, and part of expanding is like you have to clear that area and stuff like that for gathering skill, or I think we call it naturalist right now. it's kind of like a very abstract, like in the current skill plan, it's kind of this very abstracted, oh, okay, you, let's just make this like a universal kind of like, so there's this, actually that's, but essentially kind of like all the gathering skills, so things like, foraging and things like that, that's all kind of abstracted into gathering, and this naturalist, kind of thing where it's, a lot of those general skills are kind of just folded into one. So you have that, so you have this path coming up, and yeah, you just have this kind of little thing, and it's just kind of there. So it's like a one room, like it'll probably have like space for like maybe two, like in the corners, like bookshelves back here, and like in the two corners you have spaces for two library function modules, and that's about it. One thing that's one thing that's a problem I have to think about as we go through this is that as we build these libraries, is that we do want to move the player out of this workshop eventually, but if we want to have like the player living in this like so this is pretty much this is the we'll just call this tier 1. So we have this basic library, so it is just this very basic little thing, and obviously you have this workshop right here. It's just kind of there, like it's what was I saying? But if we want to move the player out of the workshop, do we want to have like a temporary house that they're in, or something like that? I guess depending on where we want this, we could have like a side module that's like kind of where your temporary bedroom is. It's not meant to be a bedroom, but it is just kind of where you're sleeping. And or things. It can also be one of those things where it's okay, the workshop has like, I don't know. It's something where also it's like on top of the actual building upgrades, kind of like not quite like the kind of like individual parts of it might have like individually upgradable portions where it's like in the workshop you can like renovate it to make it a little bit nicer and get some extra bonuses while you're in that workshop. Meanwhile, it's like, okay, that's kind of like the greenhouse, where it's like the greenhouse is this specific module that you can build once you get up to tier 2. So, and all that's there. So one thing so if we're kind of coming from this base, kind of some ideas I was thinking about is that we could have is kind of the two things where if we're gonna having this courtyard thing, having it expand out, that's a bit too wide for, I don't know. It's also one of those things where it's like, as we figure out how this looks, it'll kind of depend the other set. We want to make this look kind of like a natural evolution of the library, is to have like it come off this way and come off this way, and you know what, like maybe eventually it gets like some towers or something here, but essentially coming back over here. So like we get some modules along here and like some classrooms or whatever as you come here, and it comes into like the first collection or so, and the idea of like that, and like having this here, I think actually it's probably useful to what does the final thing look like and work backwards from there. So let's design that one. So let's design the final thing of this U side. So we have a path coming up here, and this is here. So we have this initial building, so it kind of comes up, and we have this building here, and you know, probably like part of this path, like, okay, that's places where you can like put outdoor decorations and whatnot. So like coming out from here, you have like this hallway, and that might have like some, let's be smart about this, Lily. So you have like a hallway that comes out, and okay, so then that has like classroom, like room, or like maybe like a longer room like that, and that could be like, maybe that's a collection that comes available. And then you have like another one of these modules, that bigger rooms, that's kind of like another collection. And kind of the same thing where here, where you're coming around. And obviously these wouldn't be all that, it would be stylized and figured out, but as a general layout. But the main thing is that we need to figure out where we're putting these 10 collections. Well, at least 10 collections, potentially more. So, and then you have this coming up here, and probably same thing with like classroom. I mean, it might make some more sense to put them on the outside, but essentially we had to have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Actually, I don't know if that would be enough room for a lot of those. Actually, one thing we could have like these, and this would provide kind of like this courtyard area. Then the idea is would love to like do kind of something like this. Obviously, like, I'm very much freehanding it and like kind of just getting the shape of what I like. Maybe and kind of like have it like veer off that, but thing is, just with the nature of using a tile map and whatnot, diagonals are a little bit tricky when it comes to something you're actually be using and building in, especially like for modules. Like, okay, if we were going to say like a collection module is like long and like this, or like in the building, like a collection is this shape, yeah, we can like rotate it 180 degrees. Moving it to be like a 45-degree angle is a lot harder. So who knows? And the idea is like kind of like this, is that most of these could just be like, okay, we go up a level. So it'd be the same thing, up one level, and then at the third level, kind of be there. Actually, okay, so what if, thing this, like, instead of like this room being here, that this room honestly doesn't even have a collection anymore, and it is just kind of this entryway, and obviously the scale is thing, but that this is just essentially just kind of like, this is like your main stairwell room that like goes up and down, that this is your main stairwell, and then you can come off over here, and probably would have smaller stairwells like, okay, in the corner that you can like come up and go up and down from each of these corners. Just for ease of access and whatnot. But kind of this being this grand open way, yeah, okay, so we still have like these two modules right here, but otherwise not. And kind of we want, and as upgrades happen, we want to create like some modules at the same place, which this has you like, okay, this will have like maybe that admin check-in and something else. That's like the initial modules that you can build. But essentially we don't want to have it upgrade and be like, that's kind of why we don't have one benefit of not having a collection here is that when we upgrade it to like the next tier, which the next tier might actually just be like adding these wings specifically, and they have specialized collections, and this is just a generalized collection. And then when we add the next tier, it's like you add these and the next floor, and this collection gets moved out, and kind of the general collection is moved elsewhere. Or there's like some parts for this general collection, and it's replaced with this big stairwell. But the main thing is we want to keep any modules here kind of stayed, so it doesn't like, yeah, we can replace them, but we don't have to then be like, oh, I had the administration desk here, but this module doesn't exist at this upgrade, and now the administration module is like over here, and that's just unintuitive. And yeah, so that's one option. Another option is this provides this like large courtyard area, is kind of going for a larger like central wing. And I'll say also again, like I want to reiterate, like I don't really know the scale that we're going for on this. So we just had like this where we have this entryway, the initial building here, and you know what, this might actually make sense to have this one be kind of, have the initial building be more like landscape, I suppose, and then having like the second tier be opening it into this much larger building. And this will give you like, I don't know, the this one will give you like the first okay, so like this one like has like 2 modules or something, and this entryway and like the general collection, it's like kind of this tiny little library that's like the basics. And then you get this larger room that like, okay, so this one like has like a few of these like normal, so we'll just say that, call them F for function modules. So we have like, yeah, we have some function modules in the center, or maybe like in the side on the classroom where we have like a wall here. But it also gives you like your first 4 or your first like, I don't know, 2 collections where it's like, okay, you have like this all here is a collection, and this all here is a collection, and you have some function stuff and kind of like a decorative center area. And this kind of gives that. And then like the next tier we could have come off like one of these larger wings, and obviously have those collections and stuff. And then like the next tier is like adds maybe the 2nd floor to this, and like this center section is that's when actually, yeah, because if we move this to be like, okay, so we have like a actually maybe not have function rooms in here, just because I don't know, but actually I could probably still do functions where we have like a central function for like, okay, we have this here, because I'm thinking of also like, and then you get like some stairs and stuff and whatnot, and you get some more on the 2nd floor of this, you get like some extra like function rooms, but there's also like a balcony that you can like look down on this whole area and things like that. We're kind of making it like this is, as we're moving on, kind of making it feel more grand and all that. And then these would obviously have that, and over there, from there we could have kind of like that the H-shaped one where like, okay, these come off, and I think most of these, I think kind of the in here, like, okay, then the 3rd floor after this, that's where kind of where you get to the civilian areas, and it comes off that, and so you're kind of in the center, but you could have like this come to here, and like in this H1 we could have this like, this is like, this like comes and connects up with like the workshop or something, and like we have this come in here, and like, okay, so like the workshop here, and the greenhouse gets put here, and then we have these like kind of like small courtyard areas, and I don't know, these could be there, and like kind of something like that. But kind of like moving for that more winged one where you have like this, and I think I do definitely want a bigger central room where I kind of like don't like the greenhouse being up front, so it's like one of those things where it's because it's like we still have this like path coming up here that leads in the library. Maybe not have these like that, and and maybe just like have this be like, okay, this grows out this way, and you just add some rooms like that. Obviously it might be like, oh, it's actually like more like this, and it might be rounded and things like that, but generally kind of like that idea of like, okay, this creates this whole look while still having this core that grows and more to get actually all the modules we need. One thing that's also important is that also to keep in mind the fact that it's like, hey, it might be like, okay, we only need 12 collections at first, but keeping the design not so tight in construction where it's like, okay, we can have this whole thing that we have no place to expand if we want to add down the line the 2 new collections that you can add to this thing. So we do need to be careful about that. And there might be something to say by like separating, okay, you have collections, and then you also have like that might be like book collections and non-book collections, for things like this is where you put your fish or whatever, and kind of like that. And those more kind of specialty built as kind of not as part of a big room, but kind of added as you go, where it's like the greenhouse might be one of those where you change where you put it, because it's like this workshop here obviously might be set in stone, but this might be a specialty collection that, yes, when you build this tier, it just unlocks this like kind of like hot spot to build a collection here where the building isn't here yet. And this might be like another like specialty collection, and this might be a specialty collection. And because it's obviously the greenhouses could look different from a where you put all of your fish, or the place where you put like is your I don't know, all of your monster loot from going into the band and things like that. And who knows, we're just kind of highlighting ideas, and these are very much kind of like traditional kind of like library senses, where we're not trying to go too far out there. One idea also is that we kind of started getting to that we could go with is the idea of, okay, yeah, so we have this like starting area, and like the same kind of idea that we have this big central thing, because like as this kind of being like the tier 2, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of like the same idea as if you've played that obscure game, The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, in Hearthfire, you get this initial house, and it's like, oh, you build this other house, and this is kind of converted to an entryway, and that's kind of what we're doing here. And I do like this kind of like core part. But what if we just had like, okay, so you do this, and then there's actually just hallways. And that they're a bit more Spartan, that they're, or maybe not that small, but like, and that leads to just kind of like, maybe not quite as big, but just like a larger module where it's less of a singular building, and it's more kind of like some separate buildings. And sure, the third story on this one might be your home and have all the civilian modules and things like that. Or that might like come up here, and it's like, okay, or things like that, and where they actually connect, and it might be like, okay, that might maintain this front a bit better, or whatever. But generally kind of the idea of having these other ones that these are their own kind of towers, and like this might have 3 floors, and the 3rd floor isn't necessarily limited to civilian stuff, and you can't actually walk directly to that, but kind of having these like separate buildings that like you can get between. I mean, I'm obviously going to clean up a lot of these designs before I submit them to everyone. Yeah, so something like that, and kind of like, or just kind of this is just this high level concept of like, okay, we have this central building, and like essentially we have like some different buildings that are just kind of like loosely connected to each other. I mean, it could be one of those things where it's like, some of these like back ones are not even connected on the ground. You actually have to go to the 2nd floor to get to them. But I mean, obviously with like ground stuff, and kind of the idea of like some of these bridges and stuff, and giving that more fantastical vibe to this library. I mean, I guess that's one of those things where it's how normal do we want the library to look, and I mean that's gonna be a question I obviously present to the group. But wow, we're already 40 minutes into this. Yeah. So this is just kind of like, I guess we didn't get actually much finalized anything here, and I still will probably need to come up with some other designs, and like clean these up and get them ready to submit for tomorrow, before probably while this video is rendering. But I don't know, I thought I'd do a video kind of on my process, and also force myself to talk myself through it as I try to figure things out. But yeah, no, this video didn't really go anywhere. Probably gonna wrap it up here, just because it's already gone for a little while. But you know, let me know what you think. Like, obviously, even though this meeting's happening tomorrow, like, this isn't happening in the void. if you have any preferences or anything like that. But, we're just kind of figuring this out and just kind of doing it. Like, we're doing this thing on our own, and figuring out how things want to work is kind of, it's going to be interesting. Yeah. Well, let me know if you have any thoughts or anything, of course. And like I said, if you want to follow along the project, I'll link in the description below. And if you're interested in helping, just pop by the Discord, just give me a shout, and I can let you know what it is you need to know. Well, that's about all I have to say. I hope you enjoyed it, even if it's a bit rambly and didn't go anywhere. I hope you all have a wonderful night, and you'll have wonderful dreams. And as always, may your stories smile upon you.